Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my trusted colleague, Wes Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field. Wes, two major topics today, both related, of course. One is that we will look back at the two joint practices with the New Orleans Saints and share some of our observations. And then we will look ahead to the preseason game against the New Orleans Saints, which is slated for Friday night, 7 p.m. kickoff at Lambeau Field, the only home preseason game for the Packers in 2022. Turning the clock back to the last couple of days, the two joint practices at Nitschke Field, Packers and Saints. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think back at those two workouts?
No. It was really
There was
good.
only one minor little
Only one scuffle.
scuffle. Yes, scuffle would be the correct would be an appropriate
Eric
term.
Stokes and Jarvis Landry just getting into it a little bit, but no, it wasn't. Nobody was throwing punches at helmets or anything like that.
No.
No, really competitive 2 days, and obviously, and I talked with our friends over with the NewOrleansSaints.com website. It really was a matter of defense, sort of controlling the tempo on both sides of the field. And some of that's to be expected. Both of these offenses are going through transitions. And right now the Saints don't have Jameis Winston. He's still been held out. And then obviously on the Packers side of things, they're trying to find their way here offensively with these new receivers and a different structure. So what I was most encouraged by over these two practices is everything we've seen from the Packers defense and the dominance and in moments of really just being able to control the tempo, that translated against the Saints.
Yeah.
And Mike, I don't know if this is the third time, right, we've had joint practices during my time here.
Yep.
Third time in 4 years. I don't know if I recalled a moment where the Packers consistently, down after down, were pressuring the quarterback the way they did in this practice. I don't think it really would have mattered if Jameis Winston was back there or not. The Packers were getting home, and it wasn't just Rashawn Gary or Preston Smith or Kenny Clark. You saw Kobe Jones. You saw Kingsley Enagbare. You saw everybody being able to pressure. The Saints had a real difficult time with some of the double-A gap blitzes and some of the looks that they gave with the cornerbacks. This was really the type of performance you wanted to see from Green Bay's defense after having a lot of success through the first 2.5 weeks of camp.
Yeah, and I had mentioned with regard to the defense when we were previewing the joint practices that I was interested to see that cornerback trio that we didn't really see on the field at all last year, of course, talking about Alexander, Douglas, and Stokes. And yes, what the defense was doing up front was impressive. There's no doubt about it. But this defense in the back end, as far as covering Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave, the rookie out of Ohio State. Now, I mean, they made some catches here and there. Let's not, this was not literally complete and total shutdown, like inability to move the ball. But there's a 100-yard football field, and defenses get a lot of territory to defend, and offenses need to put something together, sustain some kind of rhythm and some consistency with moving the ball. And the Saints really weren't able to do that against the Packers' number one defense, and it was the combination of what those guys were doing up front with the pressure on the quarterback. I only saw maybe over the course of the couple of days 1 or 2 runs leak out. Otherwise, it seemed that the run defense was holding up pretty well. And then those guys in the back end, even without Darnell Savage with the ones, with Vernon Scott, that secondary just doesn't give receivers a whole heck of a lot of space. And there are going to be quarterbacks who can hit those pinpoint throws. But the windows, to me, when I was watching the defense, the throwing windows for Andy Dalton were awfully tight.
They really were. And it was funny, too, because, well, one, the Jair Alexander-Michael Thomas matchup that we talked so much about, we got a chance to see some of that. But ultimately, the way that the Saints moved Thomas around, he saw a lot of Rasul Douglas, too. I mean, Eric Stokes, I mean, it wasn't just specific players matching up against specific guys in man-to-man coverage. It was a really, I don't want to say exotic because it wasn't that far, but both of these teams were pretty much opened things up a little bit. They showed more looks. You remember one of the big criticisms Aaron Rodgers had with the first joint practice against the Texans a few years ago was it was basically a glorified preseason game. The Texans weren't really giving them their playbook. They were doing things that you really wouldn't do if you're actually trying to practice and refine some stuff. I felt like the Saints and the Packers both did that, and that's a credit to Matt LaFleur and Dennis Allen. And in seeing a lot of these guys step up, and even you talk about the cornerbacks, but even look at a guy like Vernon Scott, like how valuable these last 2 days have been. A guy that
no question
didn't play really at all last season, and then suddenly he's the every down safety with the number one defense, lining up next to Adrian Amos. So Quay Walker's getting his first big run being inside with Devondre Campbell, a guy that he probably won't play with in the preseason at all. So, again, by and large, was really happy with the defensive work. Offensively, there were some things to clean up. But certainly, I felt like coming out of this thing, this was probably the most productive joint practice session they've had so far.
Yeah, I would agree in terms of the 3 different years we've seen this, the Texans, the Jets last year, and the Saints. I thought this was the best. It was the most competitive work where guys were playing clean. There wasn't the extracurricular, activity, that kind of thing.
And God bless the Jets, but I mean, those were 2 teams going in very different directions in terms of their seasons. I mean, I don't think the Jets were under any disillusions that they were going to be a Super Bowl team. The Saints have those kind of aspirations. So watching those units work has really been impressive.
Yeah, well, the big story on the offensive side of the ball, of course, for the Packers was Aaron Rodgers, when he spoke at his locker following the first of the 2 joint practices on Tuesday, he sort of let his offensive unit have it a little bit in terms of the sloppiness, the pre-snap penalties, mental mistakes and things. And it was in part directed at the whole unit, but there were also parts of his comments directed specifically at the young receivers, in which he was talking about, wrong routes. Obviously, there were, some drop passes in there. It was a very uneven 2 days, really, for the Packers offensively against this Saints defense. But I think we saw, after Rodgers' comments following the first practice, we saw a little bit more sharpness. We saw some more plays from those young guys in the second practice. We then also found out there was a meeting that morning that was conducted with the quarterbacks and the receivers, veterans and young guys, all alike, all getting together. A sign of just how dissatisfied everybody was with how things went offensively on Tuesday. And then we saw on Wednesday, Romeo Doubs, Samori Toure, Amari Rodgers. We saw the young guys who, were not necessarily mentioned by name by Aaron Rodgers, but we saw those young guys respond. Now, of course, you want to see them carry that over now and respond also in the game on Friday night. But it's just another reminder, I guess, of how much of a work in progress things are with this receiving core, because Aaron Rodgers knows he's got Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb, and he's doing everything he can to get Sammy Watkins up to speed. And I want to talk a little bit more about Watkins in a minute. But Rodgers said the time is running out on the young guys in terms of the regular season is right around the corner here. We've got to get things cleaned up. From Rodgers' point of view, things need to get sharpened up. And we saw a response, and now we'll see how they respond through the rest of training camp from here.
Mike, it transported me back to 2016 when I started at Packers.com, and you pulled me into an office that neither of us have. And kind of laid it into me a little bit and told me, Hod, it's just not clean enough. This copy is not clean enough. No, but what I enjoyed the most about, I hope you appreciated that. What I liked the most about what Rodgers did was, he's talked about it time and time again. He even mentioned again this week, Allen Lazard. That's his wide receiver 1 right now. He mentioned Randall Cobb is like a preeminent slot receiver in this league, one of the most proven slot receivers in this league. And Sammy Watkins, number 4 overall pick a number of years ago, has seen a lot of football, has won some Super Bowl. These guys get it. If he didn't want the young guys to succeed, if he didn't want them to be a factor this season, he wouldn't care.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be pulling these guys together. He wouldn't be, saying things. He mentioned this at the beginning of the camp. If I'm not saying anything to you, that's a bad sign.
Yeah.
If I'm not actually talking to you at all.
Right.
Because Rodgers does get it. Lazard, Cobb, and Watkins, those are the 1, 2, 3 right now. Nobody's discounting that. They're actually even on the preseason program cover if you pick one up on Friday night. But the fact of the matter is, one of those guys might get hurt. you're going to need the rookies to step up. You might see the rookies in there for a handful of plays at the beginning of the season, and Rodgers wants them to be ready. And for everything that didn't go great on Tuesday, and it was not a great offensive performance for the Packers on Tuesday, Wednesday was a step in the right direction. They are going up against a very tough, very veteran defense in the New Orleans Saints. Yeah. But they won more in the areas that I think Aaron Rodgers wants them to win. There was more preciseness with the routes. There were fewer penalties at the line of scrimmage, procedural penalties. Matt LaFleur saying that he counted up 7 in that first practice. And then honestly, it wasn't Rodgers on the field, but when they're in the 2-minute and Jordan Love airs it out there for Samori Toure, probably one of the best balls that Jordan Love has thrown yet in a Green Bay Packers uniform.
That was a pretty pass.
Toure caught it in stride, and not just making the touchdown, but because of the game situation, them needing to get the 2-point conversion to win, he has to come right back, and despite kind of having his hands wrapped up by the defensive back, he still catches the 2-point conversion. Those are the small things that need to happen, because if you're not doing this in these settings, you're not going to be able to do them on Sundays in September.
Yeah, it was a good sign to see those young guys respond, make some more plays on Wednesday, and sort of reset the course, hopefully, for where the group is headed. I thought in terms of strictly the starters, the number one offense, to me, the most encouraging thing that I saw, and again, what was a very up and down couple of practices, because that is a darn good Saints defense, and the Packers weren't entirely sharp. But those 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, I thought were the best days that we've seen from Sammy Watkins since he put on a Packers uniform. Watkins himself said, he wasn't so crazy about Wednesday. Tuesday was definitely his best day. But in terms of putting together those practices back-to-back against another opponent, Watkins talked at his locker quite a bit. I have a story up on Packers.com right now for anyone who wants to check it out. He's being very, as a veteran receiver, being very demanding and exacting of himself to try to learn all of the checks and the adjustments and the nuances and everything of the way Aaron Rodgers wants to run this offense. Sammy Watkins is being absolutely meticulous with it. Now, he has an opportunity to do that because he's not swimming in the playbook as much as a rookie is, right? Learning an NFL playbook for the first time. And this is a transition that Watkins has gone through before. He's joined the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. Last year it was the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. You're talking about other MVP quarterbacks. But even Watkins said, Aaron Rodgers, 18th season, 15th as a starter, 4 MVPs on the shelf. This is a guy who is very demanding and exacting of himself and his teammates, and Watkins wants to match that in terms of how he goes about it to get on the same page with his quarterback. What we saw the last 2 days, it's coming, right? We can see the progress. We can see Watkins getting there, but he was also very careful to say, I'm not there yet. I still need to push. I still need to tell myself that I'm not all the way there mentally, because when it comes down to a crucial situation in a 2-minute drill and a third down and whatever, I have to be out there not thinking about what I'm doing. I have to know exactly what to do and exactly what Aaron Rodgers wants me to do. That's where Sammy Watkins wants to get to.
Mike, and when I think about everything Watkins said, it was funny to me because we do all these press conferences, right? We do these interviews, and you see these media huddles on Packers.com and everywhere else. And guys talk, and they'll talk for 10, 15 minutes, and you never really know, what topics are going to come up. But I saw a direct parallel between Watkins was saying on Wednesday to what he said a few months ago.
Yep.
When he discussed how important this opportunity was to him, when he talked about his back being up against the wall. He doesn't want to waste time here. He knows that opportunity is not available to him. He's been with Baltimore. He's had the Super Bowl run with Kansas City. But ultimately, individually, he still has a lot to prove to himself. And if he's not ready for this thing off the bat, it's going to put him behind, because the Packers do have a lot of young guys that they're excited about. He wants to go out there and show that there's a reason why you brought Sammy Watkins in here, and I'm going to be able to be a veteran that not only comes in and contributes, but immediately earns that trust of Aaron Rodgers. Because as much as we talk about the rookies, veterans coming in, while they have seen a lot of football, and he's played with a lot of great quarterbacks, this is a different new quarterback that has to get familiar with him. So the accountability side of it, and I heard this about Watkins before he even got here and the way he carries himself, It's there. This guy's a professional.
Yeah.
And he's not going to back down from that. And to be honest with you, when I was watching him in that Tuesday practice, especially when I was seeing the offense a little bit more, he was one of the better players on the field that day. He was making the plays that you want to see Sammy Watkins, the ninth-year veteran, the former fourth overall pick, make.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most exciting thing. Nobody is asking Sammy Watkins to be a 2,000-yard receiver this year. They're asking him to be the best version of himself to help this offense get through this interim area where they don't have a Davante Adams. And I think Watkins is definitely up to that challenge.
Yeah, I think he is too. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has expressed his confidence that Watkins is up to the challenge. Matt LaFleur has said so. We know Jason Vrabel, who worked with him in Buffalo, has that level of confidence in him as well. And I just thought it was interesting that even after, really his two best days as far as back-to-back that we've seen on the practice field so far from Sammy Watkins, the first thing he was saying in his locker is, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
This is not like, hey, I've arrived, I've got this all figured out now. I've been through this transition before, we're good to go. That's not where he is in terms of how he assesses his own situation. He's going to keep pushing, he's going to keep driving. He wants to get to the Randall Cobb level as soon as possible. Now that's going to be impossible, quite frankly, right? It's that's an impossible task, an impossible standard for somebody to meet in their first year with Aaron Rodgers, but that's what he's going for. He wants Aaron Rodgers to feel about him the way Rodgers feels about Cobb and Lazard in this offense.
Absolutely. And for me personally, I'll just put it out there. If Sammy Watkins stays healthy, you can timestamp this 8/18/2022. If Watkins stays healthy throughout the course of the year, he's going to win the Packers a game or two by himself. I mean, he's done it a couple times in regular season openers over the course of his career already.
Yeah.
He's that type of receiver. And I really think, Mike, in an offense where they're going to spread people out and they're going to make these running backs think, every time Sammy Watkins has been in a situation where he can have one-on-one opportunities, the guy's thrived in those offenses. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know. It's exciting to see exactly where this can go. I want to turn our attention to Friday night's preseason game, but first, some sponsor business, Wes. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50 years of better. Preseason game number 2. Friday night, 7 p.m. Central kickoff at Lambeau Field. Now, we haven't heard anything definitively, but my expectation is that the vast majority of the Packers starters are going to be sitting, much as they were last Friday night out in San Francisco. This is going to be the twos and the threes, probably for both teams. We'll see what the Saints decide to do. I have absolutely no idea what their plans are. But I think when we look at this, and whether you're talking about Jordan Love or other guys, you look at a second preseason game now for these young players. It's about looking at the guys who had their moments, right?
Yep.
Who made an impression, made an impact in that first preseason game, and can they do it again? Jordan Love obviously has some things with the accuracy of his throws he'd like to clean up. The receiving core has some things that they need to clean up for Jordan Love and catch the passes that are catchable and keep the chains moving and keep their young quarterback in a rhythm. For me, when it comes to looking at those impact guys from San Francisco last Friday night who are looking to proving that they can do it again, that they can have that kind of impact in the game again, two guys stand out to me, Wes, and it's one on either side of the ball. On offense, it's Amari Rodgers. And on defense, it's Kingsley Enagbari. And I'll start with Rodgers because we saw early in the San Francisco game, the 50-yard kickoff return, nice moment for the special teams there. Then late in the game, he catches the pass in the flat from Danny Etling, makes a nice move up the sideline, 22-yard touchdown. Couple of big moments there for Amari Rodgers. Can he make that kind of impact again? I think that's what we're all waiting to see.
I think the most exciting thing when I watched that game against the 49ers was sort of the precursor to me, the idea in my head of this is what Amari Rodgers could do. And when the Packers are at their best underneath Matt LaFleur, as cool as it is to have Davante Adams and Aaron Jones, ultimately, I think a lot of their best successes come from is when guys fill a role and really thrive in that role. It was one of the things I talked about with Josiah DeGuara out of the gate. Nobody was asking DeGuara to be a 700-yard tight end, but he has a role in his body type that he's going to fit that really nobody else on this roster was going to be able to replicate. That's Amari Rodgers to me. He had the 50-yard return. And, Mike, can you tell what that meant to the Packers to be able to break that return?
That sideline was going crazy.
Well, first off, Rodgers stands up. I mean, you can tell that was 1 year of just weight off of his shoulders of, I can do this at this level. We can do this as a unit. We can break a big return here. We can create opportunities for ourselves. And then seeing somebody like Rashawn Gary come and completely faceplant the kid, it was an uplifting, rejuvenating moment for, I think, these special teams, a special teams unit that is desperately looking for wins right now. A lot of these guys that are going to be on this team, there's going to be some turnover, but there's going to be plenty of guys like Rodgers on this squad that were part of last season and want to wash last season from their brain.
Yeah.
That's a good way to do it. But even with the 22-yard touchdown, that was an instance where Amari really made the necessary corrections. He saw what was happening. He saw the blitz was coming from the slot, and he knew he was probably going to be the hot read in that instance. And once he got the ball in his hands, he made someone miss. I don't know if Amari Rodgers at 216 pounds makes that guy miss the way that this version of Amari Rodgers did.
Right.
And how confident he was going down the sidelines. Amari Rodgers has played football his entire life. He's known Randall Cobb since he was 9. His dad is T. Martin. This guy wants it. He wants to prove that he was a good third-round pick, and the Packers were justified in going up to trade for him. I love everything I saw from him. But this is a game of consistency.
Yeah.
And he needs to come out of the gates in this matchup against the Saints and continue to build on that, like all these young receivers do. Samori Toure talked about it too. That 50-yard catch is fantastic. That's a good feather in your cap to have right now. But if you don't keep doing that or you start dropping passes, everybody forgets about that.
Yeah.
And that's really what I go back to with these receivers and Rodgers. Great start with what they were able to accomplish in spurts in San Francisco. Can you carry it over now here at Lambeau Field?
Yeah, absolutely. We hear it a lot in this league. Anybody can do something once, right? Then the question is always, can you do it again? And that's what separates the guys who belong in this league from the guys who are just going to flash and eventually go on their way and disappear. On the defensive side, I think we mentioned him a little bit on our last show, Kingsley Enagbare. What we've seen over the last week, this is a young man, 5th-round draft pick out of South Carolina. I don't know if we hardly talked about him at all during OTAs, mini camp during the spring. And even in the opening days, the opening week and a half of training camp, we didn't really see much. He just, not to say that he was doing anything wrong, but he just wasn't doing anything to get noticed. Well, the last week, starting with that game in San Francisco Friday night, this guy he's established himself as a daily presence on the practice field now, and I should also say the preseason field. He got the sack in the game on Friday night. Then on Sunday, he was single-handedly wrecking the 2-minute drill for the number one offense with the pressure that he was getting off the edge. He was a steady presence in these 2 days of joint practices against the Saints. Had a fair amount of reps against a number one draft. I shouldn't say number one, but first round draft pick in Trevor Penning at offensive tackle for the Saints, and quite frankly, no question about it, clearly got the better of that matchup on a consistent basis, going against a first rounder. And now it's like, all right, he's heading out there for his second preseason game now. It's exciting to think of what the Packers might have here if he continues on this trajectory, because we've talked about how it is so wide open at edge rusher, outside linebacker, after the two starters, Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith. What else do the Packers have? Who can they put in there to give those starters a breather, to develop some kind of a rotation? And we saw Randy Ramsey get released earlier this week in the first cut down to 85. So that's another guy at that position now who's gone. The door is wide open for Enagbare here, who's known as JJ to everybody. That's his nickname amongst his teammates and whatnot. If JJ can keep this going, what we've seen over the last week, the Packers are going to feel a lot better about what they have behind their two starters on the edges.
Yeah, and it's funny, too, because I saw Matt LaFleur brought up the J.J. thing, and I've always had the same maxim since the very beginning I've started covering this team. Whatever the guy's name says on the roster page, that's what I call him. I don't mix and match it. It's Kingsley to me, but kudos. I like the JJ the Jet or whatever that was.
Yeah,
the show that he
JJ
got
the
it
Jet
from.
Plane. That's the old kids show. That's where he got his nickname, apparently.
But this is a guy at a position where the Packers wanted players to step up who really has emerged. And if you look at it, Mike, Whitney Merciless, he's cooking now. I mean, he's not coming back through that door. They've needed a number 3 guy really in that role now with, Zadarius Smith is gone. Obviously, we saw what Kyler Fackrell did in that role and the ways they used him back in 2019. This number 3 outside linebacker will play. They'll have to play. You can't play Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary every down as much as you want to.
Yeah.
And I think seeing him, Bill Huber from SI said it, and I agree with him. I mean, Kingsley Enagbare, although I don't think he was really ever in jeopardy of not making the team, he did make the team within like 4 days of practice.
Yeah.
I mean, he has made it undeniable.
Yeah,
and
he has very, very quickly in a short period of time, and with this burst of multiple days, multiple practices, has shown that he belongs in the NFL.
Yeah.
This is a young guy who belongs, and he's going to be here on this Packers team.
And he hit the trifecta. He practiced well against his own team. He carried it into the game against the 49ers. In whatever momentum, confidence, whatever you want to call it, he just came right back against the Saints and put it to work. When I was talking about all the pressure that was getting generated, you were right. Enagbare was a big part of that.
Yeah.
So the other side of it, too, if I may really quickly before we move on, I just want to give a quick mention as well to Jack Heflin. I wrote about him this week on Packers.com. Heflin really reminds me of the Jaron Elliott's, some of these guys that are the undrafted college free agent types that, there might be more talented people at his position. As he says, he understands how high the ceiling is. He's trying to raise up the floor. That's his goal when he's on the field. But when he's in games, the guy finds ways to win consistently. Last year, he led the Packers in quarterback knockdowns. This year, he comes out of the gate and he sets the tone against the run. There's these guys, Mike, every year. I talked about it with Rico Gafford a little bit earlier this month, too. Guys that just want it. Not saying they want it more. I'm not trying to compare anything. But Jack Heflin is putting every single thing he has into this camp because he knows nothing is guaranteed. He can play out of his mind and maybe still not make the team with how deep that position is. But he's not going to leave anything up in the air.
Yeah.
He's going to leave it out on the field.
Yeah, when you're talking about, guys like Heflin and what they do over the course of multiple preseason games. We saw it last year. That's why he made the team. He's trying to do the same thing. And for a guy, it's a guy who's trying to carve out a role to where, maybe he gets a handful of snaps a game in the regular season to spell some of these guys who are in front of him. Well, he's going to play 25 or 30 or 35 snaps in a preseason game. The opportunity that he has to show what he can do is not lost on him, and his relentlessness when, quite frankly, he had to be dog tired in the fourth quarter of that game last Friday night in San Francisco, and how he kept coming after San Francisco's offensive front. That's the kind of thing that stands out on film to the coaches. That's the kind of thing that gets you noticed. And yeah, he's another one of these guys that made an impression in that first preseason game. Can he do it again? But his situation is a little bit different than that. He's been through this before, right? He's been through this before, and he's made the team. He's trying to do it again in actually more difficult circumstances because of a first-round pick at the position and a free agent. I'm talking about Devontae Wyatt, and then a free agent brought in at his position in Jaron Reed. He's still trying to fight to make the squad. So, yeah, he's definitely another guy to keep an eye on. Last thing before we go, anybody else that jumps out to you that your eyeballs are going to be on from the press box at Lambeau Friday night?
Yeah, I said it during our Packers pregame radio. I'm going to keep saying it now. It's Jack Coco, who was the backup long snapper, really, when you look at it, what he was doing in Georgia Tech, that transitioned over to tight end once he got a scholarship. Jack Coco's the only long snapper on this roster right now, and I know that's a very small thing. It's not a receiver or running back, but that's a critical position for the special teams unit that's trying to get renovated, and he has no competition in the building at the moment. I can't think of a more golden opportunity for a guy that never actually was a long snapper in terms of the punts in college. Was only the short snapper on some of the field goals for 3 years. This guy is someone that, Byron Storer, the Packers assistant special teams coach, had kind of found Rich Bisaccia. They brought him in on a tryout. He makes the team as a tryout player, gets that contract. Stephen Wardle was released a week ago. Now, he's competing against every long snapper in the league right now.
Yeah.
Once you get down to the end of camp. But
right.
This is, for a guy that who knows what was going to happen if Green Bay doesn't call for him, this is a golden ticket in the candy bar. So I thought last week he had a good, solid performance. And realistically, these next 2 weeks are probably as critical of anybody on the roster for him to show what he can do in these preseason settings.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely another guy to watch. And once you start talking about candy bars, it's time to
and
end
Coco.
the show. So yeah, and Coco. We're going to call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team, training camp, Friday night's preseason game. We're going to have it all for you on Packers.com. For Wes, I'm Mike. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. See you next time.